I'm Connor McReynolds, and it's always the last person you'd suspect. So, when I tell you that I've designed and built a fully functioning time machine, you're going to want to believe me. This is the Time Machine Podcast. Each week I'm joined by a very talented guest as we hop into my time machine and go on a safari through time and space. And sure, there are ethical and practical debates to be had about temporal mechanics, but to that I say, shut up, nerds! Today I am absolutely delighted to be joined by one of my very favourite comedians, Chelsea Birkby. Chelsea has appeared on Richard Herring's podcast. She has had her writing appear on Mock the Week. She's been tour support for Russell Howard and Fern Brady. She is such a brilliant joke writer and performer, and she has a keen interest in history and philosophy, so this is going to be a great chat. So without further ado, here is Chelsea Birkby. Chelsea Birkby, hello, and thank you so much for being on the Time Machine Podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Connor. Thank you for having me. I'm good. I'm very hot. We're recording this in the middle of the heat wave, so it's 33 degrees, and I think it's actually cooler outside than inside my parents' house. So that's what's going on here.
Well, this is yet another reason why people should check out the YouTube video where we release an extended episode every week. Chelsea is in the most idyllic surroundings. You're in your parents' backyard. It looks like Hobbiton or something. It just looks very quaint and lovely.
That's very nice. And, a lot of people don't recognise that Milton Keynes is a really nice place. So check out the YouTube video. Also, actually, maybe halfway through the video, when I inevitably get really hot and sweaty, then switch back to audio. It's the right time.
There's got to be some kind of AI filter that allows you to sort of look as glamorous at the beginning of the video as at the end of it.
Like an antiperspirant filter.
Yeah, video filter sponsored by Right Guard or whatever. Do women use Right Guard? Is that just a men's one?
I can't use any of the men's ones that are like 57 hours of protection. I think that's wrong. They're just like, you won't sweat at all, and I'm too sensitive. I have to use the little baby deodorant for angels who get stinky.
I remember a few years ago finding a shower gel, and it was one of the ones that says it's for men only. Like, it was the Yorkie bar of shower gels. And it was, It was sandalwood and cool steel. And I was like, what the fuck does cool steel smell like? You don't have to say to me like, oh, you're going to be like a robot from Robot Wars if you use this shower gel. It's like, just let me shower. Like, I like jojoba. I like rose petals as much as the next person. Men are so simple. If they're like, cool, it's metallic. Anyway, I wasn't quite expecting to dive straight in on deodorant and shower gel chat, but here we are in a heat wave. It kind of makes sense, I suppose. Your choices for today for your trip in the time machine are so wonderfully varied, and I'm very excited to get into lots of different areas of your interests and passions. What didn't make the cut for you? Because you've had to narrow it down to 3. Were there any choices that you really would have liked to, but you couldn't quite?
Yeah, well, first of all, I ruled out most of history because I can't. I think I'm made really for modern times. Like, me and my friends went to Glastonbury tour, like not the festival Glastonbury, the play for Glastonbury.
Yeah.
And we were going around and we were talking about like they have an old timey garden. And I was saying I couldn't have survived in these times. And then we sat on the grass and we're talking about that. And then within 10 minutes, I had like a grass allergy. So I think I'm really made for modern times. So that ruled out most of history. And the time I'm gutted not to be going back to is like mid 1990s, because just from a fashion perspective, that is my favorite. I would go back, buy all the clothes, and then become a vintage master seller. I'm listening now.
That is a great life's ambition. I think only 2 guests so far have gone into the future, and everybody else is just kind of stuck to the past. And without giving too much away, your 3 choices today bring you into the past. Why do you think people are so reticent about the future? Is it because it's just completely not a guarantee?
Yeah, I think we'd be frightened. Like, did you ever... Wait, I think it was just a film because I only just watched it. Did you watch Big Fish?
I did. I loved it.
It was so good, wasn't it? It's time to rewatch it. But remember, there's that I thought about this because I watched it a lot as a kid. They ask you if you wanted to know like when you died or how you died, and
Oh
I thought, oh, I don't want
yeah.
that. And maybe it's just like we just don't actually want to have that much information about the future. Maybe it's that it would feel. But also, we are already time traveling to the future, minute by minute,
That is
second by
so true.
second.
That is, again, that taps into your kind of philosophical background as well, where, and that will certainly come into things today. One question I wanted to ask you was shag, marry, kill, time, travel, and time travel.
Okay, I think I think let's kill time travel because there's like a lot
Sure.
of repercussions. I think
Yes.
that's what I picked up from
Smart.
mostly, yeah, films. They've told me that. Okay, so kill that, and then shag and marry. I think shag, tr- travel,
Yeah.
and marry time. Marry time.
I think
You
that is
same?
absolutely correct. Yeah, that's 100%.
Well,
Because
hands off my husband.
what do you think is the closest you've ever come to time travel before now?
I think it's probably okay. This isn't a good one, but I think it's probably when you get really drunk and you black out.
That's
And
true.
then
And then
it's like
suddenly it's the future. And
you
you're
like come back in. Yeah.
I think that's a really good answer. I went to Basingstoke in 2005 or about 2007 maybe when I was at university, and that felt like time travel. I was like, whoa, it's 1994. Shout out to Basingstoke, but yeah, not not the most modern of metropolises. And do
Time
you,
works differently there.
time does work differently. Do you have a favorite time machine? You know, you strike me as someone who I think would appreciate Bill and Ted's phone booth, but also I don't think you're above a hot tub time machine.
I think hot tub time machine. That has to be. That's the
It's
best one.
it's definitely the coolest way to travel around. What was your when you were growing up? Were you a kind of big time travel sort of movie fan or anything like that? Were you a Back to the Future fan?
I do love Back to the Future. Is there time travel in the Terminator movies?
I believe there
There is,
is.
isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my answer. That's the cool. Like I think that's the coolest time travel. But Back to the Future is really fun. I I kind of get a bit freaked out by it. It kind of hurts my brain to think about time travel too
Yeah.
much. But no, it's an honor to be on here on the podcast.
It's yeah, it definitely is. I mean, there are so many ethical conundra, and luckily we've had some guests who are really quite cautious about it, and others who are just like, nah, fuck it, I'm gonna go back and change everything we've ever known. So do you think if you were stepping into the time machine, would you kind of just dive straight in and enjoy the chaos, or would you weigh things up a little bit more carefully?
I would dive straight in for sure. Like if
Yeah.
somebody arrived with a flux capacitor now, I would say, oh, let's go. Yeah, maybe it would be to like 1990. I'd just think about the clothes. Be like, well, let's go and see the first episode of Buffy on like the night it came out and experience that.
That's a great shout. And I want to know. I was thinking about this before. If I gave you a bonus spin in the time machine, and you could go back and revisit one comedy gig, so it could be one that you loved, one that you hated. You don't even have to have performed at it, but if you could choose one comedy show from any time in history, what one would you like to go to?
That's a great question. Um, Instantly, okay, my mind. I don't know if this is what other comics have said, but instantly, straight away, I was like, I would go back to. I thought of all the deaths and was like, could I do them differently? Could I survive them? But then that means like, do I want to go back to like just outside Brighton in like 2018? And probably not. It was like dreadful. It was like like a working man's club, which I'm on board with. But then as I went in, there was a giant picture of Winston Churchill, and I was like, oh dear, how's this
Oh,
going to go?
that sets a
And they didn't
tone.
like me. It sets a tone, and they delivered on the tone. Like they really understood their vibe, and they had the right aesthetic for it. It was dreadful. But then part of me is like, what if I had that gig today, would I be able to do it better? And maybe I would, but it would just be by being like pro Winston Churchill.
Just by going in and saying, sorry, I'm a little bit late. I've just been doing a shift at the Cenotaph. And yeah, they'd be like,
Shout out Winston. When I say Winston, you say Churchill. So maybe it's for the best that I don't go back, because then I'd have a whole different trajectory, political trajectory as a comic.
That's true. You would be the only conservative comedian, the new one.
The new one. Would you go back and revisit a gig?
Part of me thinks I would really love to go back. I saw Tommy Tiernan at Vicar Street in Dublin probably around 2010 or so. And because my memory is terrible, I don't really remember much of it, but it's such an iconic venue, and he is like one of my favorite ever comedians. So I would like to go back to that and just kind of remember more of that show. But yeah, I did also wonder, kind of like you said, thinking back to maybe the worst one I'd ever had, and that definitely would have been when we were doing stand-up literature at Blackwell's bookshop, and there was a travel issue, and one of the acts couldn't make it in time for the second half, and so I was just fighting for my life, like trying to run through. I only had maybe about 25 minutes of material total, because I was relatively new at the time. And maybe about 10 minutes of that was literature themed. So once I burned through all the literature stuff, it was like, all right, well, now I'm just going to do any old comedy. And then when I got to the end of that and there wasn't an act there yet, I was like, well, I guess it's back to crowd work for a bit. And then when the act arrived, I was just so relieved. And I think everyone in the room was so relieved. I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only one who cried when I was like, please welcome to the stage, Isa Bonachera. So yeah, I think if I could go back to that, I mean, I wouldn't have any more material now than I did then. So I don't know why I would go back to that. Maybe just to watch myself, like out of some kind of self-loathing thing.
I don't remember it. I was there, wasn't I?
You were. I think you were one of the brilliant acts in the first half. And then I think you nipped off to the other room that we were running at the same time. And so, yeah.
I left you in peril.
Well, when you left, I think it was all like, it's fine. The other act will be here very soon. And then I just kept getting these panicked messages from lovely Alex Farrow saying, taxi hasn't arrived. She'll be there soon. Stall. And it was the stall message that really terrified me. And so, yeah, maybe actually, now that we've talked through this, I think I can safely say that if there's one point in history I absolutely would not visit ever again, it would be that moment. But enough about me. I want to talk to you about your choices. So let's dive straight in. And your first spin in the time machine takes us back only 20 years. We're going to LA in November 2006, where Lindsay Lohan, Britney Spears, and Paris Hilton are enjoying a night out together. And this night out would become kind of infamous. The New York Post would run a front page picture with this, accompanied by the headline Bimbo Summit. Why do you want to be there?
I think to just see beyond that image, to see that in person, but also that was a fantastic reading. And Bimbo Summit, obviously, like horribly misogynistic thing to do. It had no business being on the front page, but it is iconic, and I'm kind of glad it happened. And oh yeah, also, so I've got my most 2006 sunglasses for this part for
They
people
are
watching on YouTube.
splendid.
Thank you. They would be more, I think they'd be a lighter color for the real authenticity, but that's a problem I'm going to fix when I go back to 2006, pick up some shades. Why I want to go back, I think it is such an iconic time in pop culture and celebrity culture. And I think this marks this is the last major moment of it, maybe before like the financial crash, before like social media really blew up, because MySpace was around at the time. Maybe Twitter had just launched, but it wasn't what it was going to become. And I think this wouldn't be headline news anymore. It'd be maybe trending on social media. But I think this could only have happened at this time. And they had these three, like they call them the Holy Trilogy of celebrities of that time. Also, did you know this? None of us knew this until like 2 years ago. But Lindsay Lohan is actually Lindsay Lohan. Like she says it Lindsay Lohan, but we've just all been saying.
Oh, I didn't know that.
She says it Lindsay Lohan. Unless she's done like a rebrand. Unless she was like, okay, I want to step away from my bad girl image.
Yeah, like when Hermes had to change their name to Every, because everyone was like, well, Hermes are shit. but let's give these every guys a chance. So maybe that's it.
It's a pretty good move. There's a guy in my school actually that did that. His name was Connor, and he was really naughty. He was like one of the kids like always throwing a chair and stuff like that. And then he said he was changing his ways, so he changed his name to Reese and said he was gonna be a good boy now.
And did Reese get head boy? Like, is Reese
Reese was
an
naughty as
MP
ever.
now? I love that he started from a point of maybe if I change my name, I'll be good. That's
He
really
really went for the
addressing the
rebrand
problem.
method. Also, once I don't know why I'm putting Reese/Connor on blast here, but like once at school, and this was like year 3 or something, so he, no, there's no shame. But the teacher said name 3 members of the cat family, and he said mummy cat, daddy cat, and baby cat. And everybody laughed, and then he threw a chair.
Oh, Reese, I love that answer. I bet if Reese came on the Time Machine podcast, he would revisit that moment and be like,
He
"Fuck
would.
you, everyone. That's a good answer." I hope he wouldn't
Also,
change a
that's one of
thing.
those moments when I hope he wouldn't, because that's perfect. But that's one of those moments people are like, "Oh, you're haunted by this embarrassing memory," and you're like, "Well, no one else will remember." They will, and they're discussing it on the podcast.
Oh, that's the sweetest answer. I love this kid.
It's so cute.
But back to this horribly misogynistic moment in time. It really shocked me. Like, it wasn't something I knew about until you made it one of your choices. And I read the article today, and like it's genuinely sickening. Like, so Lindsay Lohan was 20 at the time, Britney was 24, and Paris Hilton was 25. Like, these are just young women going on a night out. Were you aware of this at the time, or was this something that kind of as someone with an interest in this kind of era you sort of discovered after?
Yeah, I don't know if I would have been aware of like it being called Bimbo Summit and stuff. I was like an early teens, but I was definitely a Lindsay Lohan fan, and I was like following her drama, and I was aware of Paris Hilton. And even though this was after a few seasons of The Simple Life, I got into that a couple of years later, maybe around this time. Maybe Bimbo Summit is what made me think I need to check out what these girls are up to. And then Britney, obviously, I was like a lifelong, like everybody,
Sure.
like a fan from a young girl to when she was older. Yeah, and probably Britney is the person who's received the most, like, am I going to stand by that claim? But Britney, just the media treatment that she had is just probably one of the most appalling in history. And obviously, and then it was, I think this is why this is an iconic moment as well, because it was 2007 that she had the like head shave and was like hitting the paparazzi cars.
Yeah.
So I think this was really at like the end of the, like her tolerating this treatment from paparazzi. But I was aware of it at the time, but in a way, like probably I'd picked up like the sexist views of being like, oh, these like bad girls, these like, yeah, kind of shame on them sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then there was a quick switch, maybe mid-teens, when I was like, no, these women are incredible.
Well, I'm pleased you got there. It's like some of the article, like I said, it genuinely shocked me. At one bit of it showed a picture of Britney Spears getting out of a car, and it was an upskirt photo that they'd taken of her. And the article said that she intentionally flashed her crotch while pretending she hates the paparazzi and tearfully begged for them to leave her alone. Like, that is such one-dimensional bullying. I mean, saying, oh, crocodile tears while we take a photo of this young woman's crotch. Like, it's awful. And the article finished with the words, skanks for the memories. Which is vile. And it was written by a woman, get ready to be shocked, a woman called Maureen Callahan, who is now a columnist for the Daily Mail. So yeah,
checks out. Well, skanks for the memories, Maureen.
It was
that is so despicable. The upskirting thing as well. Like upskirting. I think Emma Watson has said quite a lot about this, but she said like on her 18th birthday she had queues of like paparazzi and press like lying on the floor outside her house, because that was the day it became not illegal to post those pictures.
Yeah.
And it wasn't illegal until it's like 2019 or something.
Yeah.
Like around that's when it became illegal to take upskirt photos.
Yeah. I remember watching that debate in Parliament. Just to be clear, from very much a oh, I hope this is made a legal perspective, not kind of watching it being like, come on, let the good guys win. And I remember, yeah, watching the Tory MP Christopher Chope trying to filibuster so that it couldn't pass, and you're just like, that's not a great look for anyone if you're trying to prevent this going through. Um,
That's unfathomable that somebody could, like, because I just presumed it wasn't illegal because we didn't know we had to have a law for that. Not that people
oh
were
yeah,
for it being legal.
it was. Yeah, I mean, they tried to dress it up with kind of it hasn't been fully considered, blah blah blah. What are all the implications for X, Y, Z? And it's like, no, sometimes an issue is just really straightforward. Like we shouldn't be taking photos up people's skirts. Um, it's a really barbaric practice, and the whole culture with the paparazzi. It's still awful, but back then it just seemed like the Wild West. And I was kind of interested that you wanted to, you have your choice of every time in history, and you kind of wanted to go back to this time of such kind of ferocious and overt misogyny. Um, did you think much about that, or is it more kind of simple? Is it more just I want to have a drink with these people that I'm a fan of?
Oh no, I didn't realize this was an interview with Paxman. I thought I was being grilled. Um, yes, I did think about that. And no, it's not like a time that I think, obviously, it's not a time that women thrive, but I just think it is such an iconic time in celebrity culture. And if you want to understand culture now, I think it requires going back to that time. And this is what I roll my eyes at when people when big like history boys think it's like vain or vapid to be interested in pop culture. And then it's like, okay, but wait 400 years and then that's going to be like good history and you're going to be like how this shaped society. I think
Mm.
like just as important as like the courtiers in the, I don't know, 14th century, like it's this is so significant to understanding more like the rise of social media, like influential culture, which Paris Hilton was one of the like earliest
Yeah.
forms of a modern day influencer, sort of famous for being famous. Um, all of it, and like I think this media treatment also inspired Britney's album, her next album, The Blackout, which I think is one of the most iconic albums of all time. Like we wouldn't have Charlie XCX's Brat if it wasn't for Blackout. Like it's just changed with like audio production, singing. She references, she starts with, we wouldn't have It's Britney Bitch maybe without this moment. um, and that she writes these albums that are about her experience with fame, which so many modern pop songs are about. And also, I just think the clothes are incredible, and that's not as, maybe it is. I just don't think. What am I going to say? It runs deeper than just being like, and the clothes are pretty. Like I think they're so emblematic of the time. Like they're very sexy. In fact, 2006 clothes are like very back now, like a baby tee and then sort of low rise boot cut. Like it's funny how fashion goes in these like 20-year trends.
Yeah, yeah.
And what does that mean if all of the political like connotations of that at the time are like they resurfacing now? And I think they slightly are. Like there's a whole bunch of music out at the moment that's like these feral women, like and they're pursuing sort of hedonism, like maybe Charlie XCX's Brat, or like Slater's latest album is incredible. Like her lead single is like Crank It. Maybe it's just called Crank It. And I'm like, oh, is that something we're craving right now in society? Like we've had this like clean girl time, we've had a swing, maybe more conservative, maybe recession indicators, and now similarly, like the style's back. I just think there's a deeper meaning to it. Not that I have all the answers, but so going back to that time, I just think it was such a pivotal time. And what's it like to experience that live? And with the sexism, like the blatant sexism, was everybody just, because we can see it's wrong now and we were alive at the time,
Mm.
was it just, did everyone know it was a bit wrong and just look the other way, or did we really just not believe it was wrong? Like it would be interesting to just experience how that
Yeah.
goes. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's all
my
so
answer.
interesting. And I mean, you've talked about the impact of that era and about the practices in the media and the art that people like Britney were making at the time. But what was this sort of era like about? What did it teach young women, both from the kind of what the messages that young women were getting from the way that things were reported, but also from the people themselves, like people like Paris Hilton, who, as you said, was kind of famous for being famous. And yeah, like so what do you think the era was about? What were the big takeaways for young women at the time, and also for young men? Like, what were we being taught at the time?
I think for okay, so if I think for women, it was a time of. Right, I'm just going to gather my thoughts. I'm glad this isn't radio. Sorry, let's just have a few seconds of data.
This is great. Yeah, we just hear the birds in the background. We can just enjoy a moment of calm while we talk about, systemic
Slut shaming.
misogyny.
um, well, it's interesting because Paris Hilton obviously nepo culture, nepo baby, like that phrase wasn't really born then, but obviously her perfume was called Heiress. She was known as being like the daughter of the Hilton family, like she played into that. But I think part of what it teaches us is people hated her for like being this like rich bitch. I think that's what people would say all the time.
Yeah.
But then she did something different with it. Like not every heiress, not every like nepo baby is granted huge success. And I think it really symbolizes like 2000s capitalism as well, because she I think she makes most of her money, or at least did at the time. She's a DJ now and she makes a lot of money from that. I think she might be the highest paid DJ but in the world. But before that, I think she made most of her money through perfumes, and she sort of like franchised that. And she was also good friends with Kim Kardashian, who was her wardrobe assistant.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, and then from her, well, Paris Hilton had her sex tape, which now we know to have been revenge porn. Like the difference of that at the time, it's like, oh, all these jokes about how she films herself having sex and how she's profiting off that. And then it turns out, no, she was abused. And exactly the same for Kim Kardashian. People saying Kim Kardashian followed her playbook when really, no, Kim Kardashian was also abused. I think it teaches us at the time, like how horny society was, how it wants these sexy women, how it's obsessed with them. Like Britney had like 130 paparazzi like following her all the time, but then how women are shamed for it. And I think it kind of teaches us about how that sex and desire is something to be like capitalized on, and there's no problem with that unless you're the woman doing it. And I think that's still it's developed today, but still it rages on. And much more like minor example, but I was joking how like on Friday I don't need to name the day. Recently, I did a comedy festival, one that I love, I'm delighted to be a part of. But it's funny because in the promo for the festival, I was listed as like, there was all the comics, and then instead of it can't fit everybody, of course, and then it said and more, and I was included in the and more, which is fine
Right.
because I'm
Yeah.
not like hugely famous. But then in the brochure, and this has been the same every year, in the brochure every year they run my picture, and they can't include everyone's pictures. In fact, they include fewer pictures and they do names. And I think it's because I don't know, it's slightly like flirty a picture. I'm in like a crop top, and I think it's really funny that they're like, okay, her name won't sell, but do you know what's going to be good for business? Printing her
Mm.
picture. And I don't think anyone's sitting there calculating that. But this goes on so often, and yet women are criticized if you were to put the picture forwards as like, wearing fewer clothes. But yet that like it's the awkwardness of like, oh, sex sells, but don't sell yourself. Like that's not feminist. I think this still rages on.
Mhm.
But so emblematic of that is like Paris Hilton, and in her shadow, like or following her steps, and now probably in her shadow is Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, yeah. That's really, really interesting, and I'd not thought of that. I mean, obviously it's so easy to see cause and effect with the harassment and the haranguing and the hounding and bullying that, particularly Britney Spears was subjected to, Lindsay Lohan as well. They had very significant mental health and substance addiction issues. Um, we've spoken about Paris Hilton before, and I know that you were a fan of her TV shows, and um, I don't want to sound judgy, but I'm very judgy of her. I think she's said and done some really reprehensible things. And in the sort of recent enough past that I know she's kind of attempted to rehabilitate her image, and she released a documentary a few years ago, and she's come out and spoken of her own history of abuse, sexual abuse and institutional abuse. Um, and I just wonder, how successful has that rehabilitation been? Has that kind of offset her previous kind of wrongdoing, or is that too oversimplistic a way of judging a person?
Um, That's interesting. And I do understand where you're coming from. She said some very bad things. And then some things she's known as having done bad things and didn't do it. Like that famous image of her wearing the top that says "Stop being poor."
Yes,
That
yeah.
was completely digitally edited. It said "Stop being desperate," which is, again, maybe not a great thing to, unless she's practicing sort of like Zen non-attachment to outcomes, which I think that's probably what she was doing. But yes, she's done some bad things, and I think maybe all of them, I don't know if that's true, but have all done some like drink driving, which was like a huge thing at
Yeah,
the time.
yeah.
But as for rehabilitating her image, I think we're just understanding it in like the nuance that is fair. Like I don't think she's like a hero, but that I think people are recognizing, oh, we really treated you terribly. You were like number one punchline. You were like a lightning rod for slut shaming and
Mm.
misogyny and all of this. And I think yes, she's owed an apology. She has done some mad stuff. Like she got really into selling those NFTs and things, didn't she? And
Oh, I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me.
it no, it fits.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the worst things that I knew of her was that she said that the women who had accused Trump of sexual assault were just looking for attention. What was just trying to get attention and fame, which isn't a great thing to have said. Um,
No.
but yeah, it's she certainly. I mean, all three of the women in that, and so many others, as well around that time were very much victims of this kind of culture. In your sort of time travel experience here, where you're coming from 2026, and a lot has changed, and as you said, we now look at the way that these women were treated and spoken of in a kind of new context. Would you be looking to advise them? Would you be looking to kind of say, like, stick to your guns and do this, or I promise that it's going to get easier, or anything like that? Or would you just want to go and have a kick-ass night out with these women and try to forget about troubles?
Honestly, yeah, that's funny because I'd be older than them, like older than them if I went back now. Um, I guess I would feel a bit protective of them, but what could I advise them? Because I think if at the time the world wasn't ready to hear, if they said,
Mm,
like
mhm.
Lindsay Lohan was saying, stop taking photos up my skirt, and then they were like, you attention seeking horde, like
Yeah,
it wouldn't
yeah.
have really, like it probably wouldn't be a good strategy. Honestly, what I would be most tempted to do would be to join them in whatever club they were. I think they were leaving a party in like Beverly Hills. If I could have been at that party, if we could have all been doing like Soldier Boy's Crank that, I think that's it. I think that's what I want.
it's it's a kind of culture, and it's so interesting hearing you talk about how this era and this the kind of an interest in a certain era of culture, certain kinds of things. There's obviously the view that it's not particularly highbrow or it's lowbrow or whatever, and you talking about how it shapes a lot of things about gender roles and social politics, and going forward that'll be even more significant. And obviously the the birth of the influencer and how that's changing the economy and everything. So it's really interesting, and I hadn't considered those things before. um I'm not someone who fully understands or gets the kind of interest that we have in celebrities' lives. Like, I've never been someone who's like, oh, there's a story about the Beckham family falling out, I must read it, because I'm like, I don't care. Why would I care about the Beckhams not getting on? But why do we care? Why do people care about? And that's not me, by the way. I know I sound super judgy, and like it's not for me to say that people shouldn't like this kind of thing. It's just like there's a missing piece for me where I don't understand why people care. But absolutely not saying it's wrong to care. But why do people give a shit about what celebrities are doing and the kind of ins and outs of their lives?
That's interesting, and I don't think it's judgy. I think there are some things like I've never been a fan of any sports team in particular, so I've
Mm.
never got that. How people are just like crushed and devastated when their team lose. Like I believe that it's real. I can see it, but it's hard to relate to because it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah. So I get it. I don't know. I know it's been. I've had it since I was a kid because I found like a magazine that I'd made when I was in like I don't know, maybe I was like 10 or 11 or something, and it had a bit about the Beckhams. Actually, it had a picture. I'd cut out pictures of David Beckham, and then there was just a page on him, and it said, Bex, he's got it. We want it. And I don't even know what I would have understood. I knew that he had it, whatever it was. And I guess I knew that we as a society wanted whatever it was. So it's just like, it runs deep. But I think some of it is that obviously stars are, like, we look up to them, like they're gorgeous and glamorous. So there's that interest. But then specifically what makes this in era, like 2006, but now even turboed, even more like addictive, like we want to find out about it, is because they're it's like they're stars and we look up to them, but also they're just like us. Like it was us weekly. It was like us weekly becoming weekly, and it having its. I think it had a segment that was like stars like are just like us, and that's what like turboed things as well, because people wanted to find out like Drew Barrymore picking up a penny on the street was like more interesting than her promoting her film. And I think sometimes just the more information you get on someone, the more interesting it is. Like I've just become addicted to this. Like she's like a Coachella influencer on TikTok and Instagram, or festival influencer, and she posts like she's going to a whole bunch of festivals. She's from the UK, but she's going to a bunch of American festivals. And she posts about 7 like videos a day, and it'll be like her getting up in the morning doing her hair, her choosing her outfit, her buying a coffee, and so on. And I can't tell you why that is valuable content, and yet because I think the sheer level of detail that she's willing to share, it just you just become invested. So I don't know. It's hard to explain if you're not in it, but I think sometimes people being good looking and glamorous and desirable and then sharing all is just a combo that just really draws people in. And I think it's interesting that it's American, but I think it's so British. Like this is British tabloid culture that like
Yeah.
started this and then made the US stuff worse. I think a lot of the paparazzi there would sell the pictures to US stuff, and once UK tabloids printed it, then the US could report on it. It was like,
right. Okay.
I'm not sure if that's true. Someone will have to fact check that, but it also feels like a very British obsession that then like morphed in a well, yeah, maybe even an English obsession that then morphed into like an American one. So so that's no moral valuation on that. Probably it's a bad thing. Well, definitely the tabloid stuff is, but I'm mystified by my involvement in it. But I just know that it's been part of my life since, well, at least since I was 11. Like,
yeah. It's really
but maybe it's one of
interesting.
those things like if you don't know, you'll never know. Like I won't know what it's like to be like a Manchester United fan, or like, oh yeah, like I have a bunch of friends who are celebrating like Arsenal this week, and I'm happy for them. But for them, it like changes their whole mood.
Yeah.
Which I can't get my head around. Maybe it's if you have to ask, you'll never know sort of thing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. My last question on this really fascinating point in time that you're visiting is, if you were rebooting the franchise, if you were doing a 2026 Bimbo Squad, who would you want in it?
That's great. Okay, that's a great question. I think it has to be Kylie Jenner has to be in the mix. I think she's one of the top, not bimbos, but who's inherited this role.
Is she the one who's going out with Timothy Chalamet? Yeah. Okay. Yep. Oh, look at me! I know celebs.
You know stuff. She's in the mix. Then for sure, who else? Now it's kind of broken down because they're all like influencers, and we don't have like monoculture in the same way. But I think she's like quite close to the top of it. Okay, we need 2 more bimbos. I think Britney would get just as many headlines if Britney was like involved in this. So Britney stays, and then we need our final one. Okay, I'm thinking of some rogue. I'm running through some like who would mix this up, who would be rogue in the mix.
Theresa May.
Theresa May. There's got to be one more. Have you got any suggestions?
Oh, I don't think I know anything near enough about the culture. I know that everybody was a big fan of Lizzo for a while, and then she seemed to become a bit toxic. But also that might be about 7 years ago, and that's my thing of like, hey, young people, I know things. You ever heard of Lizzo? So, yeah, I'm afraid I would be out. But yeah, I think it's interesting that you've thrown Britney in there, because I think a little bit like the resurgence of Jennifer Lopez, where now like multiple generations feel that they got the best version of Jennifer Lopez. Like recently, was it What, didn't she get nominated for an Oscar for a film a little while ago?
There was hope that she would, but I don't think she did. I think that was for
Oh, okay.
Hustlers. But
Yes,
I
yeah.
think she did. Yes, she deserved the nomination for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, J-Lo, that's a good shout. I think the final one has to be. She's a different age to these girls, but I think she generates just as many media headlines. Probably, maybe most famous woman right now. Maybe Taylor Swift. Let's chuck her in
Of
there too.
course, yeah. And
Mm.
also I think it's interesting to sort of think of even the word bimbo has kind of almost been a little bit reclaimed. Like I think the Barbie movie was a huge moment culturally where Barbie, I thought that movie was fascinating. I thought it was brilliant. It managed the marketing tag, like in the trailer, absolutely sold me. Where it said, "If you love Barbie, this is the movie for you. If you hate Barbie, this is the movie for you." And I think it did satisfy both. But yeah, Barbie was seen as a very kind of shallow, simplistic, like I just want to look pretty and please my man kind of thing. Um, Again, on YouTube, you'll have missed my playful little tilt of my head when I said that, if you didn't see it. But yeah, I think that that word now, I can't imagine anybody really calling someone a bimbo now. Kind of like the word bitch. Like, bitch was a really acidic word to throw at someone before. And now, like, it's real. I find it really shocking when I hear someone call someone a bitch, or like a bimbo. Yeah, I don't think I would hear it as much now. So
Yeah, I think they have been reclaimed if you're talking about yourself, but I think it would be a big risk to describe someone else as being like either of those things.
I'll do a little straw poll. I'll take the dog for a walk this evening, walk around the park and be like, hey, bitch. Hey, bimbo. Just see what kind of reaction I get. Well, your second choice takes us away from the bimbo summit and brings us to an altogether different summit in Paris in the late 1940s. Post war, the city's rediscovering its identity, and on the Rive Gauche, or left bank of Paris, there's a cultural hub with writers such as Samuel Beckett and James Baldwin, musicians like Miles Davis, and philosophers like Jean Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, and Albert Camus. This is a very romantic choice. You obviously you studied philosophy and you talked a lot about these philosophers on stage. When did your interest in this time period and this group of philosophers and thinkers begin?
I think that I think I liked France in the way like I loved a French. Basically, I loved Amelie. I think that's where this
Mm,
started. That set the seeds
yeah.
of loving Amelie, wanting to wear like 1960s like eyeliner and a beret. So there was already a like positivity for like
Mhm.
French culture and well, maybe not history, but yeah, the aesthetic. And then when I went to study philosophy, that was the first time I ever read. Which one did I read first? I think I was reading Sartre. I think we got to in our first year we got to choose a philosopher to like read research, and I chose him, and just absolutely like fell in love with like the ideas and the thinking about it. And I think the stage had already been set for like loving France and Paris and like the romantic ideas of it. And then it's an obsession, like the ideas of existentialism that they were all like discussing at the time and absurdism, just never really leave my mind. Like it's kind of shaped how I see the world and the concepts that are part of it. I still filter a bunch of things through, and my views on it have changed a bit over time, but it still just feels like quite an integral part now of my worldview.
Yeah. What was there a particular piece of writing or a particular idea that you first remember kind of sparking and being like, "Oh my god, I totally get that."
Yeah, it was reading Nausea, yeah, La Nausée by Sartre, that he was talking about this moment where this is the part I was like, oh my god, this has happened to other people. He was talking about looking around, and then he said, like words started to lose meaning and things started to float for themselves. And the way he was doing it was like looking around and realizing that you're looking at like I'm looking at a plant pot now, and then the separation of the idea of what a plant pot is from what we've told it to be. And I don't know, just like how you get this moment sometimes of nausea, this feeling of like what
Mm,
are things? Are
mhm.
things as we see them? Are things as we understand? And I'd had that before, more when I looked at myself in the mirror, like every, I don't know, maybe it was like once every 2 years or so. When I'd look in the mirror, I look in the mirror more regularly than that, but this phenomenon would happen where I'd look in the mirror and suddenly I guess I'd encounter myself and be like, oh, that's Chelsea Birkby, that's the person who like grew up in Milton Keynes. That's, and you start to like, I was thinking about me as somebody that looks out as a consciousness, and then observing the person that is like all of these facts have accumulated around. And yeah, so reading that bit in Sartre, I was like, oh, that's that feeling that I've had like a handful of times in my life before. And I'd never heard anyone else talk about it before. And I love that. It's kind of like observational. We're probably too far to say comedy, but it was like observational stuff, but on like the phenomenological level. Like it's about what goes on in your mind. And that just really like excited me. Have you
Yeah.
had an experience like that where you're suddenly like freaked out by like, whoa, things are things as they seem, as we mean, as we like talk about them to be?
Um, I can think of one moment where I'm not 100% sure if it's the same thing, but there was a moment that I really remember. We were down in Dorset visiting a friend a few years ago, and our friend was going through a bit of a tough time. So my wife and my friend's wife were chatting to our friend, and me and my buddy were just sat on the beach, and we were just throwing rocks at other rocks on the beach. We were just breaking stones, and we were doing this for about half an hour, and we were just chatting, and I was kind of thinking, huh, like this probably matters about as much as anything else I'm doing. Like, I could just sit here and break rocks all day, and I'm not sure it would make that much of a difference. And also, like the way the rocks are breaking down, maybe they'll become tiny pebbles sooner, and maybe that'll go somewhere else. And yeah, I was sort of thinking about all the things like this is a big rock. I'm here smashing it. What will become of this rock? Why am I smashing the rock? Does it matter that it used to be a bigger rock? And yeah, that was a bit of a moment where I was like, I might be thinking too much right now. I need to lie down.
I think that's completely it. That sounds like existentialism to me. When you're like, what is like, how do we create meaning in a
Yeah.
meaningless universe? But
Yeah.
so the, what we can learn from that is that's what happens when two husbands are left to their own devices for
Yeah. It is,
half an hour.
unfortunately. I'm not often a kind of stereotypical bloke, but yeah, I think sometimes I will just sit and smash rocks, and yeah, I am a bit of a stereotypical bloke. I read an article today about Sartre and Camus, which described them as the patron saints of losers and outsiders. I don't know if you think that's accurate, and B, if so, is that part of their kind of enduring appeal?
Interesting. I feel like I've inadvertently been called a loser outsider. So have you always loved them then? Have you? Are they your patron saints? I think that's slightly incorrect. Like Camus does have a book called The Outsider, but I think it's more. I wouldn't say it's an outsider in the way we think of sort of a bit of social freakery, which I think that implies.
Mm.
Also, maybe it's true for Sartre. I don't know. I'll come back to that. But Camus was like the coolest guy. He was like so flamboyant and well dressed and sexy, and I just don't think that's who you want as your patron saint of like outsiders.
Yeah,
You'd want someone that represents that more, which is I've now rooted to Sartre because yeah, perhaps he's more of a likely candidate.
yeah. It was so on Camus. What's interesting? I think the article kind of tried to frame it as um he was maybe kind of considered an outsider in that sort of group. Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir were Parisian. He came from Algeria. They sort of, I think it was a bit of a stretch where they're like, he played football, but he was a goalkeeper, and even the goalkeeper's a kind of outsider position. It's like, I don't know, like he's part of a team. But the same article said, and I want to quote here because it really cracked me up. Sartre was famously ugly, while Camus was, in comparison, an Adonis. Uh, at first, I thought that was really harsh. And then I Googled it, and I was like, oh, no, fair. Like Sartre was not a handsome man. He was
No,
also,
and by his own description as well. Like he has a bit in his. Did he have an autobiography? I don't know why I read this, but it's in his words that he says he was about 7 when he like encountered his true ugliness, and it was like after he had these like beautiful blonde curls as a kid, and then one day his like stepfather made him get them cut, and then he had short hair, and then he said at that moment he encountered his true ugliness, which I think many of us have felt after quite an extreme haircut. But it
but
turns
at
out his was like people widely
seven,
agreed.
at
Yeah.
7 years old, imagine looking in the mirror as a 7-year old being like, oh, I'm a monster.
But it turns out society kind of agreed. They're like, no, you're not a monster. You're just the patron saint of monsters and freaks and the fugly people.
Well, he was only 5 foot tall as well. And he and Simone de Beauvoir were in this sort of lifelong open relationship, and she was, pretty tall woman at like 5'10". Do you think there was anything of the kind of little man syndrome in his writing?
I think he was very arrogant in his writing, but then he was given like he was adored. Like it's mad to think, and that's partly why I'd like to go back to this time. But it's mad to think that these like intellectuals and philosophers were celebrities for being intellectuals and philosophers, and
Mm.
the media coverage they generated. Obviously, they created media. They were like journalists themselves, but people were just obsessed with them. And I think that's so rare to have intellectuals that are like that. So yes, he was arrogant, but also that's because he was constantly being praised. But he does have there are like flaws in his philosophy like deeper than I can understand, but like he's like, oh, we're not going to get into metaphysics, this isn't about metaphysics, and then he makes some metaphysical claims that he never backs up, and people are like, this guy, this guy.
He also famously wrote the line "Hell is other people," so I can't imagine he'd be a barrel of laughs to spend time with. That doesn't.
Yeah, of course the full quote for that is hell is other people and heaven is a half pipe. A lot of people don't know that that's the case. um, but yeah, he wrote hell is other people, and like, okay, sorry, stop me if I'm being like a bore, but you know what that means specifically is like we are so trapped by other people's idea of ourselves. So for him, that in that play, No Exit, it's three people locked together, and they can't ever like with two people. Maybe you can get somebody to see you in a certain light and have that reflected back to you, and you're like, oh, that's okay, I'm a good man or whatever. Whereas if there's a third person looking at you who doesn't think it, your view of yourself can't ever be like affirmed back from the world, and so that's why
Mm,
like other people can always see us in a different way from how we want to be seen. And isn't that the hell of existence that we're
that's
always
so
something to
interesting.
others?
Do you think that was about the three of those guys, de Beauvoir, Camus, and Sartre? Because Sartre and Camus famously sort of didn't really like each other very much, but they were both kind of a mutual friend of de Beauvoir, so they were in this group. I don't know, the dynamics you described there kind of made me think like, oh yeah, I can see that sort of reflected in those three. But maybe that's a very simplistic
Interesting.
understanding.
No, I think I could buy that. I think also Sartre and de Beauvoir had like they were in quite a few weird dynamics, not with Camus actually, but like I think they kind of had shared lovers sometimes and things like that. So there's
Mm.
a lot of in his storytelling. There's a lot of like threes come up quite a bit, and these like difficult relationships. So it fits.
Yeah. They do sound like quite an intense group of people, these philosophers, like very deep thinkers, passionate about their craft. However, apparently at the end of a day of writing and debating and arguing with one another, their evenings would often be spent in bars. And there was a story that I read of Camus and Sartre racing each other on all fours across the Boulevard Saint Germain. Do you think it would be more fun to spend a drunken night with these guys or an intense day of thinking and talking politics and philosophy? Or maybe both?
I know the evening for sure. Well, one, I can't speak French, so that's I've
Okay,
tried,
yeah.
but it's not. But I know it would definitely be the nights out after. It'd be like, oh great, we've had all these discussions, and now let's drink apricot cocktails and just listen to jazz and
Yeah.
race on all fours. I think it sounds fun as well. I do think they were having fun, and I think a core part of like the if not the philosophy, then like the culture of doing philosophy at that time was like you can make philosophy out of everything, and they were talking about real life experiences. So I think the day could be fun as well because it's not. Yes, I'm sure they were exclusive in their like intellectualism, but it could be discussed by lots of people, and that's kind of what made existentialism so interesting. Like everybody was talking about it, even though not quite everybody like it couldn't really be understood. Not by like not because people didn't get it, but because it was kind of hard to get at all. Like, and some people say, well, it never really made complete sense. But I just I think it would be really exciting and really fun, and that it was the mixture of all of the like jazz singers and dancers and like Josephine Baker and like all that mix of cultures, post-war optimism.
Mm,
I just think that would have been a really exciting time to like wonder what that felt like.
yeah. Well, crucially, I also have to ask if you're there with Simone de Beauvoir, Albert Camus, Jean Paul Sartre, the four of you, a race on all fours across Boulevard Saint Germain, who do you back to win?
I'm backing. I think Simone de Beauvoir was quite. She was quite hardy. Like in the war, I think when she couldn't access healthcare, I think she like I don't know if this is true. I could be. This is fake truth. I'm just fake, not fake truth, fake news, fake truth. That's a whole different philosophical concept. I think she like pulled a tooth out or something. So maybe Simone de Beauvoir.
Yeah. I would
Yeah,
be like,
she's tough.
I hurt my knee on a bit of glass. And she'd be like, fuck off.
She'd be like,
Have my tooth. It's
I think she's incredible too. Like maybe she's dodgy in the same way like Paris Hilton is. It's
yeah.
hard to have these heroes.
That's a
But
comparison I didn't think we would be seeing on this podcast. Like much like Paris
do you know
Hilton,
what?
Simone de Beauvoir.
I think they might both be 5'10" as well. So
Oh, well, there's
interesting.
something to it.
But she was problematic. Like I think she kind of slept with a lot of students
Yeah.
and maybe adopted one. But that said, she also like her ideas of like feminism, like that's shaped so much. And the quote that I often think of is she says like one is not born, but rather becomes a woman. And I think the most famous like
Mm.
modern echo of that is when RuPaul says you're born naked and the rest is drag. And I think that just is existentialism and like and feminism mixed with existentialism, like in two perfect quotes.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. What do you think a typical day would look like with these guys? Like, would you be sort of, if you go back in time, would you want to position yourself at a nearby table that kind of they do my go, or would you want to like pull up a chair and be like, I'm joining in, let's have a chat?
I think I'd just like to witness. I'd like to witness them in the day. I'd like to like overhear some of their discussions.
Hmm.
And I did go to like after graduating sometime. Like my first holiday that I like saved up for and went on was to Paris, and I went to like Cafe de Flore and tried to have my little like existentialist experience. And I went to the graveyard where Simone de Beauvoir and Jean Paul Sartre are buried, and people had left cigarettes on their grave, like which weirdly is out of
Oh,
respect to them and
yeah.
their culture. So yeah, in the day, and I think I would have been incredibly like they're geniuses, and I find yeah, I wouldn't really want to join in the discussions. I'd like to like listen to them, but then in the evening when the party was happening, that's when I think I could hang out with them, and I do have a huge crush on Albert Camus, so hopefully he would that Adonis, I think he would. And I just think he was sort of mad and cool, and yes, I'd like to chat with him.
I yeah, my the I think the only thing of Camus I ever read was The Plague by Camus. Um I think I might have told you this when I last saw you, that I was reading it for a book club that I was a part of, and I was really running out of time. And so I was at the gym one morning on a treadmill listening to the audiobook of Albert Camus' The Plague, and nothing can make you not want to be on a treadmill like listening to Camus. It was like, what's the point? Why am I running? It was a very difficult read and a very difficult
I
run.
think that might be one of his most depressing ones as well. I would recommend maybe the outsider is like the sort of a good story.
Mm.
But just the essay, I know it sounds boring because it's an essay, but like the myth of Sisyphus, I think is really one of the most beautiful things ever written. And it's yeah, I think that's worth it if you fancy, and you can do it while on a treadmill again, or do it lifting weights this time. Mix it up.
Do a pushing a rock up a hill.
That's perfect.
It's this is such a great choice, and it's such a fascinating time. You know, Paris only a few years, and even these guys were actually, meeting up and talking and doing this during the Nazi occupation of Paris. But when you're going in the time machine, I'm assuming that this is after the Nazi occupation. You're not kind of going because you want to experience the golden age of far right politics, but
I'm
Paris.
shaking my head for people listening. No.
Where, yeah, you know Chelsea's politics if you're watching on YouTube, but on audio, who knows what she thinks? Um, Paris attracted this at this time. Paris attracted these incredible thinkers and creatives, like a lot of people from America, a lot of like African American people, like Miles Davis and James Baldwin, and Samuel Beckett was there, and these obviously incredible philosophers and that kind of thing. The left bank, it sort of seemed to be the epicenter of this kind of exciting and profound period of thinking and creating art. What was it about this place that facilitated that? Was there something that, you said of your last choice that it could kind of only be LA at that time where that kind of thing happened? Do you think the same is true of this, where it could kind of only be Paris in the 40s? And what is it about there that made it that place for that thing.
Yeah, I definitely think it could only be there at this time. And it's partly like multiculturalism and mixing. Like, I think any of these key moments in time when you're like, culture really shifted, there were all these ideas and it was like, what, such a cool time. It's like, oh, that's because there were people mixing from everywhere. As to why Paris, I don't know. I think you'd have to know a lot more about like history for me to give an insightful answer on that. But I do think it really could only be that place, that time.
Mm.
And I would, yeah, I would love to go and experience that. And go, going modern day, you still get to like pretend a little bit, and you can dress up a bit like Brigitte Bardot, but she's a real racist, isn't she? She's really bad.
Oh yeah, she was. Yeah, I think a lot of people recently, when Brigitte Bardot passed away, their instinct was to be like, "Oh my goodness, a real icon. We're going to miss you." And then they read about her, and they're like, "I take that back." I won't go so far as to say I'm glad you're dead, but I'm not going to express sorrow that you're gone.
Because it was bad. Like, yeah, she had a great fringe and she had great eyeliner, but she really, I think her racism was like hardcore. I think like
Yeah.
whatever standard racism is obviously evil and bad, and she really was like, I'd like to make this more specific and outdated, and get in trouble with the police like 7 times for this. But she was an animal rights activist, so
Shades of grey. We're all shades of grey. Ricky Gervais also likes animals, so we're not all monsters. You've mentioned that you were in Paris, you've been to Paris and you've kind of been to that area, and you spent some time studying there. You did a clown course in Paris.
oh yeah.
And so did you spend a lot of time when you were there kind of strolling the streets and kind of pretending to smoke a cigarette and being existential?
Yes, I did. More so the first time I went than clown school, because clown school I was busy with clown based tasks
Mm.
like finding my costume. It was a lot of issues going on. But yeah, I did, but that's the thing. One of the key parts of existentialism is like authenticity, which I know in like 2010s and whatever has become like a slippy concept. Like, is authenticity just something we like pretend to have to sell authenticity?
Mhm.
But in existentialism, it's the idea of like your complete radical freedom and then complete responsibility for who you are and your choices. Um, and and then there's the counterpart to that is the idea of bad faith. So that's when you act like you're not as free and as responsible as you can. So you might be like, oh, I had to do it, or like my hands are tied. Like, that's kind of acting in bad faith. And I think going to Paris, trying to like be an existentialist, like from the in the 1940s, when it's like mid 2010s, like that is acting in bad faith. And so that's why I've decided that ultimately, actually, the most authentic way to experience being a fan of all of this stuff and going to see it is to just go full tourist mode, to
Yeah.
be like, okay, I'm going to wear Breton stripes, like, okay, I'm going to wear a beret. Yeah, sure, people aren't going to like it, but I think that's like the true thing of like when people are like American tourists, basically, when they'll go to visit Germany and then just get a top that says Germany. Like, I actually think that's a bad top, but I think it, not that Germany's bad, but like, but I think there's something so authentic actually about being a tourist, rather than being like, oh, it's like I live here, it's like I'm part of the culture. So yes, when I was there at first, I was like, oh, I'm having an existentialist experience. I was like, no, I'm not, I'm having a tourist experience. And then I think that's the most fun way to travel. Like, I don't want to be like a traveler, I want to be a holiday maker and just go and be a tourist. That's
Yeah.
my
I
way to
I
live. What
I
about you?
100% support that. I always think when people say oh, it's great, like we went to a restaurant in Barcelona and like it really wasn't touristy at all and we didn't do the touristy things. It's like, "Oh, so you didn't see all the highlights of the city that everyone says are the best things. Why? How daring of you to go there and not see La Sagrada Familia. Didn't you win?" Yeah, I think it's a kind of I totally support. I think I agree with you. Well, we must take one more spin in the time machine now. Your third turn takes us all the way back to the 1500s, to the reign of one of England's most talked about monarchs, Henry VIII. And as you put it when you told me your choice, you want to understand how he has so much riz. So, as I understand it, there are kind of three eras of Henry VIII that you could check in on. The first would be his ascension to the throne at the age of 17, where he was apparently very handsome, very athletic, skilled at languages, music, theology, and astronomy. The next would be once he's quite established as kings and he's going through what historians are calling his marrying phase. And then the last would be the obese, temperamental, possibly syphilitic era before he died. So, which one of those Henry VIIIs do you want to meet?
Well, oh, and I really have to choose one. Hmm. I think the one I'm most curious about is, I guess, the marrying era, because he
Yeah.
really so many wives, and I'm surprised. I understand he was very powerful, and there's like political alliances involved, but like, would you still like? I don't know. I'd be a bit concerned if he had previous wives, many of them like some of them without heads. I'd think I don't know if this is the man. For me, this is a red flag. So I'm wondering, like, was he still attractive? Like, did he still have he must have been so full of swag, and all the history books would just say that he was such an attractive person. I think maybe that's like how when you're showing pictures of a partner to friends and you say like, oh no, he's like better looking in the pictures, like he must be that type of guy. It's got to be how he's experienced in person. So
I think you're
that's what I want to
absolutely
experience.
right. Like, when you hear that, yeah, oh, he had a couple of his wives killed. It's like, and you're marrying this man like that. He must be really charming. What would you expect to see if you're in his kind of court at that time? What would you expect to kind of run into in terms of attitudes or culture or
Well, I'm not really a history buff, so this is so a lot of it would be a surprise to me. Even stuff that is like you were taught this at school, I'd be like, what happened? The church, what? But I think he must be the most confident man, like one to be like to just be pulling all these women. And I do think some of it did, from what I know, which is not very much, sounds like some of it was like seduction and flirting and attraction, not just
yeah.
like alliances. So that, and that he'd like to be with a new woman, that he'd like change the like religion of the country. That's a man who like backs himself, like he's got confidence. Like I wonder if he was in like modern day, he'd be like I was going to say a podcast host. I mean like I mean like a podcast host that then also sells their like university like on the side, and they a
Yeah,
grifter,
yeah. It's like get Henry
and
VIII
everyone would be happy to.
crypto. Yeah.
Yes, I think that would be it. And I'd just like to experience like what is the charisma of this man. But honestly, everything else about the time I'd be surprised by. All I'm expecting is I'm expecting a lot of loot. I'm expecting as in
Yeah.
LUTE.
Yeah.
But yes. um and maybe I probably a hard time to be a vegetarian. I don't know if that's true or not.
I would say that's probably fair. Yeah, there seemed to be a lot of
Yeah.
turkey legs flying around at that time, but again, that might just be based on one man, and that one man being Henry VIII, who was said to love a turkey leg. Which I went to a
Yeah.
Christmas market in Toronto about 8 years ago, probably, and at the Christmas market they were selling these like fucking enormous turkey legs, and I did feel like I was kind of walking around like Henry VIII. And I can tell, I got a sense of why you would feel so confident. It's a baller move to just hold this huge piece of meat and just walk around chewing it. So I sort of got it on a micro level.
We've got to the bottom of it. It's just holding a big
It's yeah.
turkey leg.
The secret to
That's what we need to
Riz
know.
is turkey legs.
Instead of like these power stances or like words of like mantras, just pick up that turkey leg, hands on the hips, and and you get that girl, and the next one, and the next one.
The you might be surprised to learn that at my Catholic school in Ireland, Henry VIII wasn't a hugely popular figure. So I don't think we really learned very much about him, or at the very least, if we did, I can't remember a damn thing because I have a head like a cabbage. But I did when I was looking at this, researching this before we chatted, came across the sort of little rhyme that has been created about his wives: divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Insane that that's like a little kind of, it sounds like one of those sort of playground poems that kids would talk about. Also, like the one about what's the one about the plague again? A ring of roses. It's all about dying of the plague. English poems are very strange.
Oh yeah, they're English. That's interesting, and that you didn't learn about him at school. He was a huge. this is bad because I don't remember much about him, but he was a huge part of our education at school. I
Yeah.
feel like there was like ancient Egypt, Henry VIII, then that's the big ones.
And then a bit of World War II as well.
A little bit of World War II, but more Henry VIII.
Really,
And
yeah.
I kind of have a trauma response is too far, but for some reason there was a joke. One of the girls started at my class that she said Henry VIII was my boyfriend, and I remember being like,
Sorry,
I was like, he's not my boyfriend.
Me laughing like that was very much feeding your trauma.
It's all coming back.
It's such a ludicrous thing to say.
Exactly, he's dead, and I was a child. But you couldn't argue with these people, Connor. They were just saying Henry VIII is my boyfriend, and because obviously I reacted, then it spread. And
Of
I swear
course.
Henry VIII came up like a year later in another history class, and they were like, "It's Chelsea's boyfriend, Henry VIII." And maybe if we all went back in time and he really was that attractive, then I would proudly say, "That's my boyfriend. That's my man." Yeah, maybe.
His reading about his wives, there's obviously some extraordinary, some really sad. I think technically you have to say it's quite sad that he murdered two of his wives. Sorry if that's a controversial statement. I think it's sad. But I think the saddest outcome for any of his wives was actually his fourth wife, Anne of Cleves. Do you remember why he and Anne separated?
I do, but can we cut to an ad break? Hold the thought. I need to, like, my battery's running low, so I'm going to shift positions quickly.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah.
yes. Anne of Cleves.
Anne of
Continue.
Cleves, yeah. Anne of Cleves, I think her reason for separation was arguably the one that I would have taken most personally. And that says a lot when two of them were beheaded. Anne of Cleves, they got an annulment because the marriage was never consummated because Henry found her unattractive. He married her, and this man who was addicted to marrying women and sleeping with women married her and then was like, "No, girl, let's just pretend this never happened. You can go." Like, I would rather be beheaded than someone not sleep with me because I'm too ugly. Maybe that's quite strong. I don't know.
Wow, that's insulting. That's kind of more like a returns policy, like over Christmas.
You got to
Like
keep
it's
the gift
unopened.
receipt. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of despicable. But did she go on to live a good life after that, or she was
I mean, I can't imagine she lived a happy life. Like you were talking earlier about, looking in the mirror and what do you see? I bet all she saw was, I'm so ugly that big fat man with his turkey leg won't even shag me.
That's quite painful. I do think this is probably not the best move, but I guess I'm going into it. Anne Boleyn, she was the hottest of the wives. I think I like kind of a gothy sort of witchy look, and there was the rumor that this I do remember from school that she had 6 fingers on one hand, and I think that's intriguing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It could have been a lie, but I'll go and get the scoop on that if I go back to the
Yeah,
marrying era.
You could bring back one of her fingers. I guess that wouldn't prove anything actually, and it would just be a gratuitous act of violence, and everyone would be like, "Why the fuck does Chelsea have a finger?"
It's Anne Boleyn's.
You've got to believe me.
Yeah. I would like to hang out with her. I think she was the most alluring. She kind of gives me like Angelina Jolie sort of dark energy. Yeah,
Well,
so I'd like to hang out with her, high five her, high six her.
She certainly got the mystique because she was the one that was accused of adultery, incest, and treason. So to get the scoop on, did you really do that? Or because obviously a lot of people say that was largely fabricated so that he could get rid of her and find someone who would give him a male heir. Because that was the first wife, Catherine of Aragon. That marriage was annulled because she failed to give him a male heir. Anne Boleyn beheaded, she did give him a male heir. Then Jane Seymour, his third wife, she did give him a male heir, but she died due to complications from childbirth. So, careful what you wish for. Fourth wife, too ugly to shag. I mean, unlucky in love might be a way to describe him. What do you think if you went back in time, and what if Henry, is it a risk that Henry could take a liking to you? And what do you think your fate would have been?
That's interesting. Mm, well, that's the thing. If he really does have as much charisma as he says, like if he did
Mm,
take a liking to me, it might be hard to,
might
might
be
be
hard to
hard
say
to.
no.
I think actually, I think maybe I would think maybe they all thought this, but like I can fix him. You know, he'll be different.
I think he is, yeah, one of history's greatest projects. I could fix it. I mean, obviously, the time machine that we're traveling in is beyond reproach. It's expert craftsmanship, but I mean, people are calling it the finest time travel vessel in podcasting. I don't know, but if something happened and you got stranded in the 1500s, you said earlier you think you're very much made for modern convenience. How do you think
Mm,
you would fare in the 1500s if you got stuck there?
not well. There's the grass allergy. First of all,
Yeah.
there's vegetarianism. Is that the time when they like instead of drinking water, they would just have like beer all the time? Like they didn't really have clean water, but they had. So actually, that would help. That would serve me well. I could do
It
that.
does sound like a golden time to be alive. Yeah, turkey legs, drinking beer instead of water. Sign me up.
I might be into it. I like the like bonnets that they'd wear as well.
Yeah, they're fun. They're different.
They're-
Yeah, I think if I went back wearing my Cookie Monster hat, and again, you only get to enjoy it if you're watching on YouTube. But yeah, I think I would probably be burned alive if I went back in my Cookie Monster hat. So I'd have to think carefully about my wardrobe.
yeah, I think that would be a risk. But then, what would any of actually some of the cuts that were popular in Tudor times are sort of popular now, like a sort of straight cut top. I think I would have the right. I'd have fun choosing what outfit to wear to go back. Is that how the time machine works? Like
I
we,
I think it's
yeah,
something I've asked of people. Yeah, are you thinking about your wardrobe? And I'm pleased to see that you're taking this seriously, because some
yeah.
people just rock up in their jeans and think they can go back, and you're like, you're gonna be burned at the stake, but that's on you. Henry VIII, he sort of reminds me a little bit of kind of Boris Johnson or Donald Trump in that, he's objectively a big, brutish lump of tyranny. And yet, for some reason, women are attracted to him. Like, but it wasn't just money or power, was it? Like you're saying, it kind of seems to have been something about his personality. And again, that sort of seems to be the thing. Like, women seem to like Boris Johnson's personality, and I don't
Mhm.
know if he, I don't know how it works.
He was. I mean, Boris Johnson. This is where we cut to my wall of post-its, and it's just all Boris Johnson. He um he was really funny on Have I Got News for You. Isn't that like part of the like that's kind of part of how
Yeah.
people say like how he got the job in the end. Like that's what made him beloved. Maybe being funny is just the way. And like Trump, obviously like despicable, but it was reality TV that really helped launch his career as well. Because
Yeah.
when they were had the writer's strike, he then was on The Apprentice, and obviously they have to puff him up to make him be like, this is the guy from The Apprentice, and then that cemented him as like this successful business guy. Maybe it's just going on reality TV
You,
and being funny. That's enough.
do you think if Henry VIII were around now, he would have some kind of bachelor style program where women would compete to be his seventh wife?
Yeah, and the stakes would be really nicely high on that, isn't it? Because either you get
Yeah.
the rose or you.
Or you get beheaded. Well,
That would be so good if someone was excluded from well, it wouldn't be good, obviously, it'd be bad. But sorry, like this person's kicked out of the reality TV show for incest and plot to kill the king.
okay, now I'm watching that reality show. Yeah. Raise the stakes and I'm in. Well, I want to play a little game with you. Henry VIII was obviously married 6 times. I'm not sure if that makes you really good at marriage or really bad at it. I think maybe he just really liked wedding cake. But his 6 wives, it's an impressive total. But Henry's not alone in having been married on multiple occasions. So I'm going to give you a list of famous figures, and I want you to tell me if you think they were married more times, fewer times, or the same number of times as Henry VIII.
Okay, great.
So we will start with Nicolas Cage. Has Nicolas Cage been
Nicholas.
married more times, fewer times, or the same number of times as Henry VIII?
I'm going to say, that's insane. I'm going to say same.
You're close. You're off by one. He has only been married 5 times. And fun fact about his marriages, he filed for an annulment after 4 days of marriage to his fourth wife, saying that he was drunk at the time and unaware of her criminal history.
Very Anne of Cleves vibes.
Very. Okay, now we're on to Pamela Anderson. Has Pammy been married more, less, or same?
I think, I think fewer. I think 4 times.
Pam has been married 6 times, the same as Henry VIII. And she said that she realized she'd made, and I quote, a tremendous fucking mistake before the end of one of her wedding ceremonies. That's a sad day.
Wow, that's a sad
You've
day.
just said
That is
I
a sad
do, and
day.
then you're like, oh no.
Do I?
Okay, let's
Wow.
go to Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman, beloved British actor, but has he been married more times, fewer times, or the same number of times?
Fewer.
That is correct. Gary Oldman has only been married 5 times, and his second wife, Uma Thurman, dumped him by letter, saying that he was impossible to live with, and said it takes a special kind of woman to put up with you. So Gary Oldman, there we go. This one I think is easier. Elizabeth Taylor.
Elizabeth Taylor more times. Is
That
that right?
is correct. Elizabeth Taylor was married 8 times to 7 different men because she married Richard Burton twice. But her marriage to Eddie Fisher might have been her most controversial because Eddie Fisher left his wife at the time, Debbie Reynolds, to be with Elizabeth Taylor. And Debbie Reynolds was apparently a close friend of Elizabeth Taylor's at the time. So, Liz, that's not cool.
That is that's scandalous. Not
It
cool, Liz.
is scandalous. I mean, here's me saying earlier on I'm not interested in celebrity gossip, and now I'm here dissing Elizabeth Taylor on a podcast. Um, let's go to Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney, beloved old actor. Is he dead now? He must be
Same.
dead.
I think same times. As
Same.
many times. Yeah.
Mickey Rooney was married 8 times. Uh, but
Whoa.
interestingly, his final marriage lasted 34 years, which was longer than his previous 7 marriages combined.
Whoa. He really had his marrying stage. He had that early and then Henry had
Yeah.
his.
And also,
Wow.
it's got to be hope for someone like, maybe Henry VIII, maybe a seventh wife would have been the one. I'd have thought after 5, you're out of your mind. But you know what? Mickey Rooney there to prove us all wrong. He was with his last wife for 34 years. Next up, we've got Judy Garland.
Fewer times.
That is correct. Judy Garland was married 5 times, and 2 of her husbands were gay. Obviously, a friend of Dorothy, obviously Judy Garland married 2 gay men. Weirdly, though, her daughter, Liza Minnelli, married 4 times, and 2 of her husbands were gay too.
Wow.
They didn't have good luck because Debbie Reynolds, who Eddie Fisher left for Liz Taylor, Debbie Reynolds was Judy Garland's mum, wasn't she? I think. So that whole
Oh yeah.
family has a problematic history of marriage.
That's blowing my mind. And they were like, they weren't an arranged, sort of like they'd arranged it when it's like, look, I know you're gay. Let's get married. This would be
Oh no, I don't know.
the
Maybe
nicest
maybe
friends.
there was a bit of that actually, but I
I hope
like to
so.
think that Judy's gaydar was just way off. It's like, will you marry me? I sure will, honey. It's like, I really wanted to be that. Sorry for the homophobic thing there. I wish I could cut that out, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to.
We're going to time travel back to 2 minutes ago.
Yeah. Okay, 2 more to go. Larry King, famed
Larry
American
King,
newsreader.
more times.
That is correct. Larry King
Whoa.
was married 8 times, and he famously once remarked that marriage is just a formal invitation to a divorce. So, which, at least he was witty about it. And lastly, Joan Collins.
Joan Collins, same amount of times.
She was actually married fewer times, only on 5 occasions. And her separation from her fourth husband, the singer Peter Home, resulted in him protesting outside her home, holding placards saying that she'd left him broke and homeless. I don't think that's going to win her back, Pete.
No,
That's a
that's not
terrible.
a good move. Not a good move.
So yeah, well, six marriages, not quite as prolific as some of history's other figures. To the best of my knowledge, at least Larry King didn't kill any of his wives. So I think on balance, Henry's probably the worst of the lot. And that says something when Nicolas Cage is in the mix. If looking at all three of your stops to history, if you could take back a little souvenir from one of your trips, what do you think it would be and why?
Okay, it would definitely be. Oh, I'm torn because part of me is like, okay, it would be like a 2000s ultimate, like mid 2000s culture piece. Like maybe it would be a full Juicy Couture tracksuit from the time, like original. Yeah, okay. Or I was like, oh, it could be something from Imagine Gang, something from like from Paris at that time. But no, nothing can beat a genuine mid 2000s matching Juicy Couture set, maybe in like hot pink.
I think
That's what
that
I'm
is
going
a
for.
great shot. I was wondering because Simone de Beauvoir obsessively kept diaries. Apparently, her nickname was the Beaver for her kind of feverish habits. So I did wonder whether grabbing one of Simone de Beauvoir's diaries would be cool. But maybe you don't steal your hero's diaries. I don't know. That's maybe not a very cool thing to do.
Yes, that's why I chose the Juicy Couture tracksuit. Yeah, it was
Out of
ethical
respect for
reasons.
Simone de Beauvoir. Well, as we get back home now to 2026, I really loved your three choices. I think it was such a great range of things. Looking to the very near future now, there are rumors that you're bringing a brand new show to the Edinburgh Fringe this year.
The rumors are true. I am bringing a new show to the Fringe. It's called Chelsea Birkby is in full control the entire time, and you're invited.
It's got such a terrific trailer that you released on your Instagram. I must have watched it about 100 times. I love it. The show is going to be absolutely fantastic. Can you give us a little sneak peek as to what the idea behind the show is?
Thank you so much. That's really nice. So it's about basically a magician read my mind, and it completely freaked me out. And the show is me trying to handle that, unpick the consequences of it. So it's whether I'm trying to prove whether free will exists or not, in the guise of kind of 90s guru self-help style. So there's a lot going on. Also, it's a PowerPoint show, and
Excellent.
that and it's going to be perfectly smooth, no tech issues. I'm not going to have to run inside at any point, change venues.
And if people listening want to see more, hear more from you, find out all of the Chelsea Birkby news and when you're going to be gigging, what's the best thing for them to do?
The best place to find me is at Chelsea Birkby on Instagram, and you can look at my website if you like. I designed it myself, and you can tell.
It-
There's actually a page. There's a hidden page on there, and Connor, there's still an advert featuring you
oh
in it on
yeah,
there from that time. So explore, see if you can spot Connor on the website.
it is not just because I'm on the website, but it is, and I genuinely mean this, my favorite website on the World Wide Web. It is the best designed, funniest website. I would urge you to check out Chelsea's website. Chelsea, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I really look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Chelsea. Bye. Thank you so much to the fantastic Chelsea Birkby for such a great chat. It's coming up to that time of year when you need recommendations for shows to see in Edinburgh, and Chelsea should be at the very top of your list. Make sure you follow her on socials, and there's a link to tickets for her new show in the episode description. And thank you again to everyone who's been listening to this series. I'm so enormously grateful for all the kind messages and support. Please keep them coming, and please like and share, subscribe, all of that stuff. When this podcast becomes the first ever podcast to win an Oscar, you'll get that satisfying feeling of knowing you got in on the ground floor. That's all from me this week. Take care of yourself, look out for each other, and bye-bye.